Hello and welcome to today's coffee seminar. Today we will be unlocking the secrets of pouring excellent latte art. And right here Zach is getting ready to do his excellent pour. And I'm Kenzie. I have been a barista on and off for about 3 years, and I have yet to master that perfect pour.
Like Kenzie was saying, my name is Zach, and I'm gonna pour a seahorse. Why not? So maybe eventually, learning these basics that we're doing today, you might be able to do something similar. So we're gonna start it off super basic with a seahorse today.
Yeah, very basic.
Yeah,
so Zach, will I be able to do a seahorse after today's lesson?
After today and quite a lot of practice, you might be able to. Now I've been doing this for, probably a little over a decade or so. So it does take a little bit of time in order to do so.
And I see you're super concentrated right now, making that excellent art.
Oh yeah, making his belly right now, coming up, making his head, make his little dots because he's got to breathe.
Wow, excellent.
All right, and then maybe by the end of this today, you'll be able to do something similar. Okay, maybe not, but
maybe not exactly
we
like
will
that.
be able to get to the basics. As you can see, there's a lot going on with this cup, and we're gonna be able to get through each one of these steps. So maybe you can do some butterflies, some seahorses, whatever you might want to do.
Maybe even a heart. We'll
Yes, okay, yeah, you know what, maybe we should start something with a heart. We are live today, so that will be a little difficult to kind of teach you and maybe everyone else how to do this right away.
Yeah, so if any of you have any questions while we're getting into today's lesson, feel free to type it in the chat. We'll go over some of the questions throughout today's lesson, and then at the end we'll have a big kind of Q&A. So if you feel that your question hasn't been addressed yet, it will be addressed at the end, and just feel free to ask us anything.
Yeah, I like to rant on, so definitely don't be afraid to chat in there. Stop me before I keep going. Also, that's what Kenzie's also here for today.
I'll make sure we are on topic, on pace, because Zach likes to yap.
Yes, I do. I'm a big yapper. All right, so I guess we should talk about what we need for today, like what I just used to pour the seahorse today.
Yeah.
Not saying that we're going to pour seahorse, right? But we need a couple things here. So first off, we have a machine. So I hope y'all at home are gonna be able to follow along maybe a little bit today, especially when it comes to our pitchers and cups as well. So we have more of our basic things. I guess you need some espresso, you need some milk and all that fun stuff. But the main things that I want to talk about today are pitchers and cups. Now this is super important because if we look at the cup firstly, here's a couple pretty common cups. These are not neutral cups, and what we like about these ones is that they have a rounded bottom. It's a little hard to see on that white cup, but as you can see, it's a nice round bottom, so the crema, which is that CO2 releasing from espresso, doesn't get trapped anywhere, and it kind of rises nice and evenly and smoothly. Now, if you want to start getting to your pours a lot faster, which will kind of teach you why that might be important, we also have a little bit shorter, shallower cups. And these are shallow with rounded bottoms, but they have a really wide mouth. So if you find something like this, these are super nice for your big extravagant pours, especially the way they layer. Because we're kind of layering like how you throw pebbles into a pond. Yeah. Each one's gonna kind of ripple effect into the other one.
And this is great to start out with, especially when you're first learning how to master some of these techniques. Good to start out with a nice, good cup.
A nice, good cup.
Nice, good cup.
And then from there, we also need to kind of talk about our pitchers itself. So if you came to our last seminar, we did talk a little bit about pitchers.
We did.
But not too much about how the flow actually affects anything. So if we start talking about pitchers, we're mainly looking at these tips and also the size. So if you came to that first lecture where we talked about the amount of force and air that we can infuse, we talked about the benefits of these big bellies, kind of trapping a lot of that air and force into the majority of the milk on the bottom. So once we do that, well, we kind of have to pour it from there. And each one of these is going to flow out differently. Now the flow that we're looking for is about the width of a pencil, maybe a Sharpie in some pours. And you can tell that's going to be a lot easier with some pitchers than the other. So pictures like this, it might be good to stack things like hearts, some thicker lines, somewhere in between, like these semi-sharp ones right in between. You know, you could do both. You can whipple with these, which will kind of teach you those techniques shortly here. And you can also do those thicker lines. Now, something like this big nasty jug here, it's something similar to what I just used. I used the baby version of this big one. And, you know, we could get to a lot finer points and drawing art, or just finer lines within our actual whipples. So looking at the picture that you have, we'll actually decipher a lot of where we want to start with art. And then pouring is also important due to the size of that picture as well. So we'll get into a little bit of that later. So with spout proximity. All right, so from there, we kind of have our canvas a little bit. So we have our espresso, right? Yeah. Now we kind of need what we're painting. So and what we're painting with.
We need milk.
We need milk. So I'm sure you've had your fair share of issues with maybe alternative milks and skim milk.
I've worked in a couple different cafes, and we've had, you know, more so oat milk requests and almond milk, and they're definitely a struggle. One time I had a customer ask me, can you make me a heart in the latte? And I did it, but it was like I was nervous sweating the entire time.
Yeah, definitely.
Because oat milk and almond milk are really hard to get that texture.
Definitely. And this is actually due to something I kind of recalled last time on our seminar. It's called surfactants. So basically, the way that all of these fats and proteins are bonding together to create microfoam. Now, these surfactants are kind of lacking in skim. They kind of bond in bigger globs from fat globules being bigger. And you get really thick milk, but nothing that you can pour out where it's still flowing out as like a liquid. So it's really difficult. You might get lots of foam, but we want a slim amount of foam with that. So with whole milk, you're gonna have the best results really from that. Alternative milks are going to be pretty difficult, but there are alternative milks that incorporate some of these surfactants in case of like oils, and they usually call them barista grade, you know, alternative milks.
When you see those in a cafe, you're like, yes, I'm gonna get some good latte art.
Exactly. So those surfactants make it able for you to actually pour alternative milks, and you'll have a lot better time with that. Now, there's also another thing. Right?
Yeah, you can get creative and also mix some of your milks. Sometimes that's what I do. I prefer oat milk, but I don't mind sometimes putting a little bit of whole milk in there just to get that texture.
Exactly. So you can kind of mix and match, and then you can even get really creative if you want to Google up how to freeze distill your milk. You know, that's a whole entire process, and all together, you know, it really gets all those fat globules a lot smaller, and those surfactants work a lot better.
So I have no idea what that is.
So basically, what you'll do is take your milk pitcher, you'll freeze that overnight, maybe for about 24 hours or so, and then you'll actually leave it upside down over another container in your fridge for about 14 hours or so.
So you mean the milk jug?
That milk jug, exactly. So what is then left inside the bottom portion into your vessel is actually this milk perfect for latte art. It tastes really smooth, creamy, amazing texture, slightly salty. We don't have to go into the chemistry of that. So,
like that sounds really good.
We'll skip that for next time, maybe in seminar number 3. We'll go into the chemistry behind milk.
And when we have a little more time to freeze it.
Exactly.
And use it.
But today, we're gonna get way more into the actual art of the pour.
Yeah.
All right, so this kind of starts with the stages of our pour. So each one of our pours are gonna go through these stages, but you know, to a different amount, a different extent. So we actually have these up color. Then I set the base. I set that base by first pushing off and coming closer to my canvas with the tip. Then I'm pouring the art. Of course, this has to have some sort of forethought to it. You have to kind of know what you're going to pour because you have to know how much you want to create that base with.
Yeah, so make sure you have an idea of what kind of art you want to make. If it's a heart or if it's like what Zach did in the down below. Yeah, just kind of have an idea of where you're going to start from.
Exactly. So those starting points will change depending on what kind of art you're going through, and we'll talk about those different starting points and what's really happening when we're creating those bases. So next we're pouring that art from that foam that we built up, that micro foam inside our cup. Then we have to finish. So finishing also has to do with spout proximity, which we'll go through shortly as well. So definitely make sure you plan ahead, because each one of these will change depending on the art. So from there, before we get there even, we kind of have to look at ourselves, look deep into yourselves. And you have to kind of become rigid. So from there, you take command of your pitcher and your new cup, and really get used to these two things as well. So you can always pick a pitcher for a certain cup. We kind of talked about that previously in a seminar, that each one of these pitchers froths a certain kind of milk. So find one that froths enough milk for the cup that you found specifically. So next, once you've found those two things and you're in love with them, maybe do this at home. Grab your pitcher, grab your cup, and we're gonna take control of these right now. So I like to kind of keep my body, upright. Don't sit on the floor or anything. That makes it really difficult. Don't leave out your arms all the way, because then I don't even know what I'm doing over there. I need to keep everything right in front of me and nice and sturdy. Now, the points of contact that we really need to look at are creating a deep end inside our cup, where we're kind of creating the most, surface area of espresso. So after we create a deep end by tilting our cup, we're also looking at where we're first starting our pour. So this all matters, and we need to know where to pour by keeping everything, nice, tight, and upright. And we're watching our elbow movement from there. So we're not moving our wrist like this. We're not breaking wrists over here. I know they all say it's the flick of the wrist, but really isn't. So we're really paying attention to our elbow. And as we want to start pouring, we're actually lifting our elbow. And as we're lifting our elbow, if we start our pours by keeping our body rigid and we're just turning our body, our cup will actually kind of naturally come to an even surface. And that's kind of important, because if we don't and we keep it sideways like this, we're going to be constantly pouring out of our cup. We're going to be spilling a lot. And getting that movement down is a little hard. But if we're really controlling this, we can really focus on the stability of everything going on. And maybe we won't pour too much out of our cup as we're going. It's going to happen no matter what. You're going to be forgetting where your cup position even is. So I like to hold it kind of like a cup. Or a bowl.
Cup.
You can also hold it like a cup. And this is as long as you can create a nice X and Y axis. So things can kind of come out symmetrical inside your pour. I was not symmetrical actually with this last pour. On the seahorse over here, you can see that my head was actually all the way at the handle here. Maybe we'll get a little view on that. Ben, our awesome director, is getting that ready for us here. And you can see that my seahorse head was actually all the way at the handle here, because I started my pour wrong initially. You also see a whole bunch of spray from our espresso with that bottomless portafilter, but that's aside the point. We really want to think about how this is going to lay out in our cup when we're first positioning our body. So keeping everything sturdy, we're not kind of limp wristing anything, and it's really within your fingers. So next, we need to look at our hand position. So if we look at our hand position, what I like to do is kind of keep your thumb pointing up, and then we're kind of pinching whatever pitcher we have. So this becomes more and more difficult depending on what kind of pitcher you have. So some of these pitchers are a little bit easier to pinch, like this one's almost like made for my thumb that I can kind of keep it up, and then get used to wiggling this through that pinch, because that wiggle is going to help us with different art as we kind of graduate. So get used to the feeling of this pitcher inside your hand. Now, you can also get used to this sort of flow by using water.
Oh, okay.
So you can actually fill your pitcher with some water, and we can actually get used to actually pouring. So creating that base, ensuring that you're actually leveling out our body, and also ensuring our hand positions are correct throughout. So get used to pinching your pitcher, pinching your pitcher, and go from there. So get used to your pitcher.
So again, it's kind of like using our senses. I know we keep referring back to the initial seminar that we used to kind of introduce how to froth the milk, which you can also still join. A lot of these seminars are repeated, and you will repeat them throughout the week. So you can check out our schedule online to see if we'll be doing another intro to frothing milk. But yeah, in that one, we were using a lot of our senses, like hearing, making sure that there was that little chirp sound, and now here we're kind of using our touch.
Exactly. Yeah. So here it's all going to be kind of about your flow. I'm going to make a mess this whole entire time. Just wait. So if we want to fill up our cup, then fill up your pitcher from that, we can actually practice this flow and get kind of used to the flow out. And then watch as we create either a different thickness of our stream, depending on how fast we're actually pouring out. So we want to keep this thickness to about a pencil width. Now, if we want thicker lines, we can actually go a little bit thicker to like a Sharpie maybe. Okay. But you want to get used to having a constant flow.
Just like an artist.
Exactly. So get used to just kind of pouring back, creating a base and having a steady flow. Now, when it comes to actually creating little whipples, that's also another sort of art form. So maybe you want to, whipple this from side to side as well and get used to that. And we'll kind of go through why that might be important shortly. Okay. As I spill all over myself.
Don't worry, it's just water.
So another thing that you need to pay attention to while pouring is your spout proximity. Now, this does a couple different things, which we actually have a graphic of, if we want to throw that up there. So with our spout proximity, this depends on what you're drawing when you're drawing it. So as shown previously, or we talked about previously, we're first using a small pitcher in order to build up our foam. If you want to use a larger pitcher, that'll make it a lot easier when coming to certain art and the faster that we want to pour. Now, why does this matter? So as you can see in the graphic, we are forced into a high pour with a smaller pitcher. Now, if we were using a larger pitcher, we can actually get closer to our canvas a lot faster. And that spout proximity, the closer we are to our canvas, is when we can actually draw. We're now using this paint, this milk, this pencil, I think is what I called it.
Our tool to create.
Yeah, so we're now actually painting at this point. So the closer we are, we can now let our foam flow so into a liquid. So the closer you are, the thicker your art is going to be. The farther you are, the thinner it's going to be. And this also depends on the flow as well. So the faster you're pouring, the more it's going to fall through your canvas. And then the higher we're pouring, it's also going to fall through our canvas. So it's kind of counterintuitive. You actually want a larger pitcher, so.
Which is difficult. That I've had that problem where I want to start out really high and then go as close to the espresso as possible, and then I have nothing in my canvas.
Yep. Yeah, so you do want to, still integrate your milk, which you would start at about 4 inches above, and first integrate your milk, and that will happen no matter what. Now, how much you integrate will depend on the art entirely. So let's go ahead and start there before we start talking about integrating milk. And are there any questions out there? Maybe about the cup or pitcher that you're using? We can go ahead and answer some questions right now, which looks like we have one there.
So we have one by Naomi. It says, I use barista style oat milk and can never get the texture right. It's either under frothed or over frothed. I also have that problem. I tend to make my oat milk too hot.
Gotcha.
In order to get it foamed.
Yep. So this is really important because we're also looking at that starting temperature. A lot of these milks actually come kind of warm, right?
Yeah.
So they come in an aisle, so you think that you can just kind of leave it off. I still like to keep this cold, and this is due to the temperature we're starting at. We want to integrate as much air as soon as possible. So as soon as that milk actually becomes kind of warm to the touch, we don't want to integrate that air anymore, and after that it just becomes bubbles.
Yeah.
We can't actually create microfoam after that. We want to just focus on integrating that air at that point.
The cafe that I worked at, we always stored all of the oat and almond milks warm. So I had the most difficult time creating that heart the customer requested from me because the milk was warm.
Yeah, so really focusing on all that aeration right in the beginning, and then focusing on that whirlpool, and then stopping a little bit short too. We want to go around 135 to 140 degrees, so definitely not as hot. If you go extra hot with those, unfortunately, it's just going to break apart.
Maybe try keeping track of your process. Use a thermometer and then like write down what you get each time, just to kind of track and make sure you're, singling out the mistakes that you make along the way.
Definitely.
So it looks like Patty's asking, can I use half and half to create latte art? I'm guessing that's, yeah.
Okay, do we want the nerdy approach or do we want the, okay, it's really difficult. So basically what happens, it's kind of like hitting a concrete wall. So what happens with half and half is that there's large fat globules. So all these fat globules are actually broken down in the process of making whole milks and other kinds of milks. So they're a lot easier to stir around and glue together. At this point, there's huge fat globules that we're actually just running straight into. We're having all of this pressure just kind of hit a brick wall. So it's really difficult to then infuse it at that point. So it is possible, but I would like for you to maybe add a little whole milk to it so there's something a little viscous for it to kind of get past, and then start frothing together.
I don't know if you've ever steamed half and half to anyone watching, but it gets very loud.
Yeah, it gets very loud. You're hitting that wall hard. So there's my somewhat basic, I think I kept it still on topic.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, awesome. From there, thank you for the questions. Keep them coming. We'll get back to those shortly. But for right now, let's go ahead and get to some of the pitfalls of what we're going to run into. So when we look at the spout proximity that we were just talking about, now if you're having if you're having a hardship actually creating any art at all, and it's just nothingness on
maybe
your
you
pour.
have excellent milk too.
Yeah,
you
maybe
frothed it excellently. That's the problem that I have. I have this great texture, that paint texture. I'm getting ready to pour, and it's just a blob.
Exactly. So this is a very common issue, and this is why we like to name this as the number one. And that all has to do with just looking at that paintbrush, looking at that spout proximity. So if we are pouring from basically a high pour, when we're first integrating our milk, we're just going to keep dropping straight through our canvas the whole time. The only time we're going to pour is when we bring this tip to our canvas. So even if we have to pause and come closer to our canvas in some pours, or just pour right in and try to get that spout in there as fast as possible, that's what's going to lay out a lot of our art. So that's kind of one of the first pitfalls that we see. So without that drawing on the surface, nothing's going to happen for you. You can have everything perfect up until that point, but nothing will really happen.
And we should usually have the spout towards the center of the cup when we start pouring. Because sometimes I start out towards the edge because I want to have a lot of space to create my artwork. But
exactly,
you said to start in the center.
Yeah, kind of like looking at those pebbles, what those pebbles are going to do once we're throwing them in that lake. It's going to bounce all the way far off. So if we're looking at flow and how things are flowing, maybe we can actually bring up one of our latte art videos as well. Maybe a Rosetta. We got plenty of videos, some cool footage here. So if we look at So how we actually create that will depend on what kind of art that we're trying to do as well. So as we're first integrating and where we start will actually make up what kind of art we're doing in general. So if we're starting all the way to the 3/4 back and we're pushing as we pour, you know, that's going to create something called a wing, where we can actually wrap around that base layer.
And
which
then
is pretty
push
sweet.
off.
Yep, and then push off.
Oh,
and then
it's
we
beautiful.
can finish things from there. So the quicker that we actually get that tip to our canvas, the more we can put in our cup too, which is the cool part. So if we're doing those rosettas, if we just want a simple one that we're drawing out, you know, we can wait until that 3/4 up, and then we can actually draw it out. Or if we're trying to really create a lot of stacks and things, we have to start a lot sooner inside that. So that kind of leads us to the types of art that we're kind of going through today. So the first type of art that we're going to go through today is placement pours, or what I like to call kind of a placement pour. So as we first integrate our milk, which integration starts with a high pour. I usually like to start around 4 inches above.
Okay.
So we'll start about 4 inches
That's
above.
a lot.
Yeah. So we want all that foam to fall through our canvas.
Okay.
So we have this really thick crema, right? And we have to break through that crema. And we have to stir it,
Yeah.
or else it's going to stay all globbed up in a certain way. And it's going to force our art to look a certain way too. So if we create a nice base, which in the case of a lot of placement arts, it'll be about 3/4 full. So at the 3/4 full is where you can actually pause or dive deep with your pitcher, and at 3/4 of the way back inside your inside your cup, you can start pushing out your art. Now you want to do this as it's still a liquid though. So let's go ahead and bring up a video of a heart. I believe we have it. Exactly.
Expertise.
So this is a great one to start with. So as you can see, I'm working my milk, I'm working my espresso, so they homogenize together. And as you see, the higher I am, it's actually erasing any of those lines that I actually create. Then from there, I'll stop. I'll pick that 3/4 back, and I'm just building, I'm pushing as it's still liquid. Now this is just a nice little heart. And then as soon as I want to finish, I'm going to swipe up and off.
Make it look so easy.
So these can be done very systematically. So these are kinds of placements, arts where you can just kind of pour into one area and swipe off to create the design. So the placement of this will matter what that looks like too. So if you start swiveling or whippling, or the faster you push out, if you actually push that pitcher towards the back of your cup, the farther out that art will be pushed. But that requires a lot more milk too. So sure, you can get that art all the way to the other side of the cup, but that requires just so much milk, and you're gonna run out of space. So that's what we're talking about. Like, if you want more inside your cup, you know, you're gonna have to start a lot sooner in order to be pushed out, because that canvas is actually a lot smaller when you first start, and that's all going to expand as you fill it up.
And I see that you get pretty close to the rim as soon as you finish the art. So I guess one of the mistakes that I was making was that I kept trying to initiate the art right away, right as I start pouring, because I'm too scared that I'm going to run out of space as I'm pouring.
Exactly. So definitely creating that homogenized mixture of milk and espresso first to create that nice canvas that's just nice and liquid formed and even to just layer on top of is very important. Now, with that, once we've integrated, we also need to create a base. Now, there's a couple different ways that we can create a base. To name two right now, just off the top of our heads, the first one is actually going to be due to the flow of water. When we think about it, as we're pouring high, and we come to the back of the cup, we'll see a lot of the flow start moving to the back of the cup. Now, if we want our art to start flowing that way, due to the force of what we're flowing, it will naturally start flowing that way.
Okay.
If we end our high pour over here, and then just start going all the way in on this side, and it'll naturally flow where I was just high pouring. So that's one way we can have it flow in certain directions than others. Now, the other way is sort of a push-off. We can actually just go ahead and, while it's still a liquid, we can push. Get used to this fact of pushing. Now, you have to push while it's still liquid, so you still have to have that pencil width of flow as you're pushing.
Gotcha.
So getting used to that sort of movement, it's a very delicate movement, is very important. Now, if it just placed where it was at, that means you just weren't flowing as fast enough.
And I think we get kind of used to moving really fast, especially if, if you have worked in cafes before, or if you're at home, you're like, I don't want my espresso to go bad, or I don't want to lose my foam. You're moving at a fast pace. But like, I just watched you with the seahorse, and you were chatting, and we were having a conversation. You were moving so gracefully, and you were able to just get all of those little details. So it's okay to like pause and sort of take your time to get all the work, the art, the details in.
Exactly. As long as you're keeping everything worked and you don't move your pitcher too far back. So as soon as you clock your pitcher all the way back, all your foam also falls back. So we want to keep that kind of steady and ready. So if I do come up,
steady and ready.
Keep it steady and ready. All right.
Cool.
So with those, before we get into more about those hearts and rosettas and how to pour, let's go ahead and get some questions really fast.
So JD asks, should you fill the pitcher up just past the inside pour spout line? So this would have been really good in the initial seminar that we had. You said it should be a fingernails.
Yeah, it's kind of a fingernails width below the brim. Yeah. Now, that does lock you into certain pitchers for certain cups, and that's why it's important to, buy a pitcher for a certain cup, or if you have a pitcher, find a cup that it works with, because these do work in a very specific way. The flow works in a very specific way. Like this big belly one, you're definitely trapping a lot of that force and milk towards the bottom at about a fingernail below is that fill point. And that is with most pitchers as well. So if you're having really a difficulty, building up enough foam or having enough force, I would definitely suggest downsizing the size of your pitcher in order to create more force and infuse more air a lot quicker. So speed is your friend actually on this, and force is your friend on microfoam.
And you just want to get used to like the pitchers that you're using. There's a lot of different ones, but sometimes you get comfortable with one and it's hard to get out of that comfort zone. So try testing it out, see what you like best. Yeah. So it says, Naomi asked, so microfoam is only created while oat milk is cold. So once it's warm, do I dip the tip lower towards the cup?
Exactly. So as soon as you've infused that air until it's about warm to the touch, you dip back in halfway and focus on that vortex. You don't want to infuse any more air at that point, because those air molecules, basically that oxygen does not want to attach to anything without getting really into the chemistry. We could, but Kenzie will stop me. So.
Yeah, and that's for another time. Naomi also asked, when dropping the tip of the pitcher, do you attempt to skim the top of the liquid? Like, so when you're kind of like, you have the cup and you have the pitcher and you're about to send it off, do you kind of skim the top of what's in the cup?
Some people actually get that close. You don't need to actually skim the actual tip of anything, but there are people, when doing placement art, that almost kind of drop into the espresso. Now, you don't want to skim it too much in the beginning, because that's going to allow espresso to get into your pitcher. There's lots of bad things. So I would say, in general, no.
Okay, cool. And then we have a question that says, what would be better to mix, whole milk or half and half with oat milk, or vice versa, and approximately what ratio?
All right, so
whole milk with oat milk or half and half with oat milk?
Oh gosh, I feel like that would depend on basically what you like. If you like that mixture of oat milk and half and can have that.
Half and half does taste different, especially compared to whole milk. I usually use whole milk with the oat milk. I think it does a nice texture, but that's just me. You know more about that than I do.
Yeah, so this all depends on viscosity. If it's really viscous, your starting liquid, adding half and half will actually allow more fat molecules and proteins to be incorporated into that milk. So in a way, that could be good. It's kind of an experiment.
Yeah, so. Try it out. Tell us, what result you came out with.
Yeah.
Last question. Can you make art on an Americano?
I
was like, and when I said that, I was like, no, you can't do that. But then I was like, Zach knows.
With the correct crema, you can technically.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
So
So an Americano is hot water and espresso. So I was like, okay.
Yeah, so if you create enough base to it, you can do a little heart. If you're really good at hearts, you can definitely build up a little heart. And I'm assuming that we're frothing some milk and doing something. If I'm doing this with crema, that is kind of possible as well, but it's really difficult. So you do need milk. That's our paintbrush.
Yeah.
All right, so, and we apologize out there that our audio was actually cutting out during those videos, so I hope you got enough information from those.
Yeah, feel free to ask us to clarify anything as well.
Yeah, so you probably just had some nice dramatic repeats of some random videos there. So, but still some great information out there. So let's go ahead and get into our next sort of pour.
Stacks.
So stacks. So with stacks, this is kind of like now doing a bunch of hearts. So we're gonna pause in between, and in between the pauses, we want to give space. So I'm gonna go ahead and play a quick video of a stack. I might mute right now, but let's go ahead and check out this video really fast.
Watch the
Oh, okay, so I think we do actually have video, or sound. There we go. So we're starting off with our high pour. We're incorporating our milk. And now I'm gonna come still to that back 3/4, and I'm pushing out my first heart. And I can push out another.
Oh, so cute.
And then I can push out another. And right here, it's important that I'm just giving a little bit of space. So there's color between. And I'm not completely lifting up. I'm sure over-exaggerating everything. And then finishing
Oh,
off.
beautiful.
So the more that you treat each one of those stacks like a heart, where you can kind of whipple it off to the side or whipple it forward, the more space you can actually give. And the more space that you can give, the more kinds of arts and the more stacks you can do. I mean, you can stack, 50 of these things in there if you had enough room.
So it's kind of like shading when, if I don't know if anyone is familiar with drawing and all, but like putting in the different like shades kind of creates that design that you want.
Exactly.
And I see like you get really close to the rim of the cup.
Yes, I do get super close.
But it looks excellent.
Because I do want to have that thickness coming out of my spout, and I still want it to be a liquid. I want it to be viscous, and that way, as it's viscous, that's what's skimming the surface and layering to the back. Now, if I was just plopping and slowly pouring and placing too much, that means they're going to be placed right where it is. So we do want to kind of anticipate where these pushes are going.
That's when we get the blobs.
Exactly. That's when we get a lot of blobs. So really anticipate what that liquid's going to do. Again, a pebble kind of being thrown into some pond of some sort, or water, whatever you want. Some analogy. So from there, there's a lot of things that we can mess up on. So maybe we should actually show some things to do and ways that we kind of mess up. So you said that you were actually having difficulties with a heart.
Yeah.
So maybe we should all kind of get out our machines, some milk, and pour a heart right now.
Pour a heart right now.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and prep a shot right now. And we're gonna go ahead and pick a pitcher. So with a pitcher, a heart, I'm gonna kind of go for something a little bit more rounded. As we're doing that thick push, the thicker I can get that Sharpie size, the more of a base I can create. Now those bases are very important to create because that's kind of what we're stacking a lot of our art either into or onto. Now when I say base, that's kind of like that first line that kind of draws out. So paying attention how you're creating that base and getting used to that flow out will be more and more important. So let's go ahead. I'm gonna froth the milk for you.
Yay.
So everything is consistent. So let's go ahead. I'm going to do something called pitcher sharing or pitcher transfers. So as I said before, how important it is to have a large pitcher to do different kinds of arts. And if we want a nice big heart right now, we want to start a lot faster. Well, I also said that you have to start with a smaller pitcher, right? So kind of counterintuitive, like I said earlier. So we're going to start with this in order to have that nice texture and a big pitcher. We could just transfer it into a different pitcher. Now this also increases that like kind of viscosity of that microfoam. It's well infused within all of it, and hopefully we can pour something really nice.
And then what cup should we use for this design?
All right, so with the heart, let's go ahead and go for one of these small cups. Now we're using a really large pitcher and a small cup, so hopefully we can really get the tip in there a lot faster, and we can build up a really nice heart. Now hearts, you know, they do get creative, so if you do want to start practicing a little bit whippling, kind of side to side movements at a steady flow, you know, you can create layered hearts as well, if you really want to stack it up.
Like in the video.
Exactly. So let's go ahead. So this is all prepared. Oh, I'm just lacking on my side.
You just need milk.
So I'm going to go ahead and prepare this milk. Now, if you could tell on this fellow over here, I actually don't have really too much of a rim. So you'll find a lot of pitchers actually incorporate different line sizes as well. So that'll really help over time getting used to how much milk that you really need. In this case, it has my 6-ounce mark. Another way of doing it, tips and tricks over time, you can actually weigh out your milk too and see exactly how many grams it is of a certain milk. You know,
I've noticed a few people weighing out their milk, and I had never heard of that. I thought it was just the espresso portion.
Yeah, so we really do that to control how much is going to go into that cup every time. So if you look up videos of world latte artists, a lot of them actually do that. So we'll go ahead and always pre-purge our wand. So nothing's going to change from our previous seminar of really making sure that we're starting off with success.
And the reason that we do this is to eliminate any excess water into the milk, because then that will affect our froth.
Exactly. So we're also going to start at the center and also halfway into the mass of our milk, just as a little recap. And then we're also gonna incorporate that whirlpool, so we're gonna tilt a little off to the side. This is a 3-hole, I believe, so it's gonna be almost towards the edge, kind of somewhere in between here.
And you should be able to do this on any machine that you're using. I know we have a pretty nice machine on display here, but you know, you can use it on any type of machine, whether it's single boiler, heat exchange, or dual boiler.
And one of the only differences between those machines is just your ability to be able to do this at the same time. So as you can see on this dual boiler, I can actually froth my milk and pull my shots at the same time.
Which is very convenient.
It is very convenient. I do like that. And as you notice, I'm not weighing my shot on this. I'm actually going just for a darkness, a consistency, because we're just practicing today.
We're focusing more on our artwork.
And I don't think we'll be able to drink it, so. No teleportation yet. All right. So always cleaning off our wand afterwards, working my milk, and I'll go ahead and start my transfer. So
okay.
So I'll then pour my milk into my other pitcher. So now all of that milk is nice and homogenized.
All the consistency stays together.
We'll also want to work our espresso as well. All right, so let's go ahead and you can take control of your pitcher and milk.
You want me to do this?
Yes, we're going to have you do it.
Okay.
And we're going to go ahead and point out any little things that might be going wrong.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and start from the basics. So we're going to stay nice and strong, steady. And then we're going to want to kind of swirl our milk. We're going to want to create a nice homogenized base as well as a homogenized milk.
Multitasking.
Perfect. Exactly. That'll be hard to get used to. And then we're worried about our X and Y quadrants, right? So if we want our pour to end this way, we want to kind of hold it this way.
Okay.
Right? Keep it nice and close to you. And then work your milk all the way up until your pour, or else this will all kind of stabilize. And then we're going to go ahead and pour into our deep end. Create that. 3/4. And then we're pushing out. So close. All right.
It's still blah, but
So what happened there?
I choked up.
So it wasn't quite that. So we did this kind of in purpose that we actually spent way too much time until our pour. We want to be pouring this as fast as possible, especially after we milk transfer. We want to go straight forward.
Because that's when the milk is nice.
Exactly. So this blobbed out just like so. Every technique, everything else was just about there, but it blobbed out because all my milk actually just sat there for way too long.
And I initially had it way far out away from me.
Exactly, which kind of gives you a little less control. But some good things do happen from this. So due to that infusion of our crema and our espresso, we do still have a great texture. And we actually had this great point where there is a lot of contrast. So if we look here, Ben, our awesome cameraman.
Go, Ben.
Ben's got it. Oh, I'm in the worst spot ever. Here we go. Let's see.
There we go.
Awesome.
I thought it was going to turn out into a heart for we started getting all the colors and everything, and I was very convinced. I was like, oh my God, I'm getting there. But
exactly. But it was kind of controlled according to what the crema and the foam, how that was actually layered, was how it came out, right? Yeah. So we want everything to be still viscous as possible, as worked as possible, or else it will come out to a blob, like so.
And if we were using oat milk, it probably wouldn't have appeared.
Actually, no, it could have actually, because oat milk is a little bit more viscous.
Okay.
So you might still be able to build onto that heart. So even if you actually let alternative milk sit to the side like this, they do act in a different way. They'll actually gain a little bit of structure if you leave it off to the side, not work it all the way.
Oh, okay.
So fun little fact there, and maybe a tip that you can actually take to the bank. No, or take home. All right, so from there, we can start working on, it's like, okay, so we need to pour a lot faster. Well, what if we start incorporating some wiggles to it?
Okay.
Do you think we could do that?
Yeah.
All right.
We can do that.
So let's go ahead and try that. All right. So we're going to go ahead and prep another shot. And this time we're going to focus on the wobble. So everyone out there, if you have your pitcher and your cup, definitely focus on moving that from side to side. So a way to practice this is maybe get out a metronome and actually have this to a beat. So a lot of things actually go wrong. Well, I was going to show what goes wrong, but what we're going to do wrong today is controlling that motion too much. We're forcing that to happen too much in real time. We're not anticipating what it's going to do, how it's going to flow out, but we're kind of muscling it. Now, why I like to use a metronome as we're actually flowing out is that we're only flicking the pitcher, according to that beat. We don't have to go both ways, because if you look at our pitcher and how it flows out, I only actually have to flow out. Let's see, let's find something. We're running out of pitchers here. All right, so as I actually do this, let's see if we can go ahead and get a great, oh yeah, this is awesome. All right, so what I'm going to do is as I create this base, I'm only flicking one way. And as you can see, the water actually rolls back the other way on its own. So I'm not forcing it both ways, I'm forcing it one way. And I'm just letting it roll inside my hand, and it naturally comes to the other end because it's just, balancing down at the bottom. And that will create nice, even layers as well.
And you can also practice with mochas. Chocolate is a great way of getting that latte art, so you're not like wasting any espresso or anything.
Exactly.
Like that.
Yeah. So if you're having issues, some cacao powder or anything like that, you can definitely practice with that. It also creates a really nice contrasted base. So if that's something that you're struggling with, it'll create that really rich background of things as well. So let's go ahead and do our next one. And this time we're going to go ahead and utilize this one right here. Nice small pitcher from Barista Hustle.
Ooh.
And our shot's ready.
And don't forget to purge your wand.
And don't forget to purge your wand. Everything kind of systematic, clean as you go. As clean as we can go. At least this time I'm not spilling everything everywhere this time. If anyone came to the last one, it happens. So we're gonna use a pretty small cup again. We'll try to use a similar cup so we can get to that art a lot faster, right? So with this one, I'm gonna actually maybe pour this one so I can show the mistake as well.
That would be excellent.
Unless you feel like you can mess up, I don't know.
I definitely think I will mess up.
Yeah?
Oh, there you
Okay.
go. You got the espresso.
Looks like we need to go a little bit finer on
Looks
our
like you're an
espresso.
abstract artiste today.
Yep. All right, so this time I'm actually purposely, pulling my shot and then frothing my milk. So we'll see what happens.
We're kind of zeroing out all the different factors, taking it all in and then going back. Okay, what
So-
can we change?
What's happening now to my espresso is that crema, that my canvas, is really thickening. So it's gonna force me to make some really crazy lines.
Ooh.
So as we can see, every part of this process is going great. I'm getting some great milk texture. Okay, I didn't have the best shot in the world, and it's sitting there.
But we can save it.
We could save it if we do it correctly. But will we be able to do it correctly?
I don't know. If I do it, I don't know.
All right, let's see if I can mess this up. After you pour for so long, it's actually hard to mess up things, so let's see what happens. So I'm gonna go ahead and use this smaller pitcher, so we'll just see when it comes out. We'll see how full we have to take it, and let's see if we can actually get a pour.
And I see you're moving around both of them.
All right, so I didn't do too much to my espresso this time, so let's see what happens to my art when I don't move my espresso, when I don't work my espresso.
Okay.
Oh, see how it's kind of blotching out? It's really thin on that side.
Well, I mean, that's better than my blob. Oh, it's cute.
But what we see that happened is that art actually didn't push all the way down to the bottom like we wanted because it was less viscous, right? Or it was more viscous on this side. So as we pushed out, it kind of just wanted to stay there.
Yeah.
It wasn't incorporating all the way. So sure, this is nice and symmetrical and kind of towards the top of the cup. If we wanted to utilize the whole cup, we wouldn't have been able to do that.
I mean, I would serve that one.
We would serve it still, but we would want to kind of work our espresso to create this outer layer of contrast to more infuse into the base of things. And you can kind of see where those issues are at hand. It's a lot lighter on the outside here. So that's how we can tell it's like, oh man, I couldn't push my art all the way down because I didn't distill my crema enough, or else I would have like a nice contrast and similar symmetry of this darkness on the outside. So that's somewhere where we can go wrong with kind of any art, creating that base. And then I had to quickly pivot because at that point I couldn't do a rosetta.
Yeah.
And it became a little difficult because I had to start a little bit later because of a small pitcher. So a couple issues there. Now we could get rid of all of those things if we're really working our espresso, we're working our milk, and maybe milk transferring, and then we could have had a better start to this. All right.
I mean, it still looks pretty good.
I know, so it is a little hard to mess up all the way.
But you still had all of those mistakes and you were still able to make art at least.
Exactly. So really focus on your canvas. So it's not just having good milk. Good milk was this whole entire time, but we still kind of messed up, right? So focus on that canvas, your body positioning, what's going on, how things are flowing out, and you'll have great success.
So it looks like we have a few questions from y'all. If you do have more questions, feel free to ask them. We'll address them. And let us know if you are following along, what machine you're using, what kind of pitcher you're using. We would love to know. So first question, do you have any tips for getting nice textured milk on a Gaja Classic Pro, which is what we have right over there?
Yeah, it's funny. I kind of had a feeling that we might get this question, so I just went ahead and turned on that machine. So with the Gaja Classic or anything of a single boiler type, it's not going to produce as much pressure as this big boy that we got. Now, the higher pressure you have, the more microfoam you can actually create. It's kind of hand in hand. We'll go through the chemistry a little bit later, not this time. But you can still be able to create a microfoam as long as you're focusing on, starting with less liquid, so a smaller pitcher size, and then also focusing on that whirlpool. So where we focus on the whirlpool will depend on how many tips that we have, or how many holes on our tip that we have. So the less holes or the less amount of pressure, the more we have to push on the outside of our pitcher for that whirlpool. Now, if we have like a 4-hole, we can be a little bit more towards the center of our pitcher. But other than that, we're going to really focus on incorporating as much air as possible, starting at a cool temperature with a small pitcher.
But it's very possible to do it on this machine. I've seen it.
Yep, it is.
Yeah. So the other question we have, what are the cup sizes that you're using? Are these 8 ounces? And what size are the pitchers? Are you doing the lattes with double shot around 2 ounces?
Gotcha. Yeah. So with the lattes, we're pulling normales. We had this somewhat dialed in. It kind of went crazy in between while we were doing this because espresso is volatile. And, I was doing enough just to create a thick base. I wasn't too focused on my base of this. You can do this with any amount of espresso. So typically, in order to give yourselves a little bit more room, if you'd like doubles, opt out for maybe this not neutral, which is actually more towards, I believe this is their 12 ounce. So it's definitely on the larger size. That'll give you a lot of room with the double shot. Now, I was also pulling kind of ristrettos with these smaller 8 ounce and 6 ounce cups as well. So with those, I do like the way they kind of wrap around. You can get a lot of wings on the smaller cups, especially when you use a large pitcher, which maybe will show a little bit something.
With like a thinner spout?
You can
like
do the
wider?
thinner spout, but it actually doesn't matter. That all depends on the flow. So as you flow, you can see that it's a lot more turbulent within these smaller cups. So they're more likely to kind of wrap around all of your art. You can get some really extravagant wraps and things. And things will kind of layer very nicely in these smaller cups. But to start with, to give yourself time and space, maybe towards those 12 ounce cups. And as you graduate and you get a lot faster with that pour and you have your large pitcher, you can go to a smaller cup and really stack and wrap them.
Nice.
So
Stack and wrap. Okay,
Stack and
so
wrap.
the next question is, when I start to combine the milk with the shot, the milk mixes with the shot and the base becomes white instead of a coffee colored base. Is this because my microfoam is not dense enough?
All right, so if it's immediately whiting out, is this kind of what's happening?
Like what you were talking about with when you poured, you said there was the white outer space, not really giving it that like the contrast between espresso and milk.
Exactly. So we kind of need to look a lot at our espresso itself. So really incorporating that thick crema as a base. If you don't have a crema, it's a little more difficult. You won't have as much contrast. Now, if it's also whiting out right away, like it's drawing everywhere, you might be incorporating too much air. It might be a little bit closer to a cappuccino. Now, when you're frothing for latte art, you only want a couple chirps. Especially if you're on a dual boiler, just a couple chirps. Work it to about, half an inch of foam on top. You can always dip your pinky inside there. And then make sure you're working your milk that whole entire time. Because if you're not working your milk, it will blotch out right away, even if you high pour.
Because it's
just on the top. So that's the first thing that's going to come off. So you really want it to be incorporated.
Then another question says, on a single boiler machine, where do you need to wait to get the boiler up to a frothing temp after pulling your shop? How do you compensate?
Okay, so I usually compensate by pulling my shot and then ensuring that I really stir in my crema.
So kind of keep that movement going
While
you're
movement
waiting
going.
in between. Okay.
Yep, exactly. So if you're waiting for that to warm up, make sure you're stirring in that crema, ensuring there's a good base. If you're trying to practice a lot and you just need some sort of base, I definitely recommend adding a little chocolate into it or something like that. Yeah, which creates a really nice thick base, or cacao or some cinnamon can also keep that crema together. It's really surprising what a little cinnamon can do with latte art and keeping it all kind of homogenized and kind of together on that.
Yeah.
So.
Another question says, any advice for trying to do latte art in a smaller cup, more like a cortado? And I know, one of my coworkers at the cafe that I worked at, they were always able to master like this beautiful latte art on like this really itty bitty cup, and I was like, how?
Yep. So this all depends also on the pitcher itself. So again, the faster you want to pour, which in a cortado, you have to pour pretty quick in order to get anything inside that.
Big.
So go ahead and froth a certain amount of milk, hopefully in a smaller pitcher too. Just incorporate enough foam and everything when you pour it and transfer it into a larger pitcher.
Oh, okay.
So utilizing that larger pitcher, you're going to be able to pour a lot faster and better. We used to have latte art competitions just using cortado cups, and this is how I could still stack, wrap. I could do butterflies. You can still do everything inside those and still incorporate techniques of how much to integrate. So the faster you want to pour, that's great for wrapping and wings and all that fun stuff. And then if you just want simple placement movements like hearts or rosettas, still stir until that 3/4 and then go in for your art, but a larger pitcher will do.
Well, thank you all so much for all of the questions that you had. They were excellent. I also had very similar questions before coming on here today, and you all asked them. So I hope that you are trying this at home as we were doing this. And if not, go try it now. Let us know how it works out. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, and go ahead and check out our schedule on our website for any upcoming seminars. These are every day, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, during the weekday. We're not here on the weekends, unfortunately. Sorry, guys. But on YouTube live now, starting today, and as well on Zoom for, I believe, another day or so.
Yeah.
After that, straight up YouTube. So,
you can also,
hello, YouTube fam.
Yeah, hello. You can also check out our schedule, on the website, see what's upcoming, see what's kind of repeating, and then tomorrow we're going to be doing pulling the perfect shot, fine-tuning for flavor.
Yeah, so if you are into chemistry at all and all those compounds that are releasing different things and exciting, funky things inside your espresso, I'm going to go through that with Zach. So it'll be another Zach on Zach webinar on that one. So it'll be a great time and hope to see you there. Again, my name is Zach.
And I'm Kenzie.
Thanks for joining us.